Deep in the mists of the North Atlantic, where sorrowful winds sweep across jagged cliffs and the sea crashes endlessly against the stone, a forgotten tale stirs once more. The waters here are not silent. They murmur with voices that sailors swore they heard when fog closed in around their ships. Voices that carried grief, warnings, and sometimes laughter that froze the heart. These whispers are the legends of the sea that time has tried to bury, yet they rise again whenever the tide brings back memory. The ocean is more than a vast stretch of water. To those who lived by it, the sea was alive, filled with spirits that watched, waited, and sometimes reached out with unseen hands. Fishermen, lighthouse keepers, and travelers carried home stories that blurred the line between life and death, stories that became warnings to their children and mysteries for generations yet to come. These are not fables meant only to entertain. They are fragments of human fear and hope woven into the waves, legends that remind us that the sea does not forget. The first of these whispers comes from the cliffs of Kilkee, where villagers once spoke of a banshee whose cry heralded disaster. Some believed she was a mourner, a spirit forced to lament the deaths of sailors before they occurred. Others swore she was a cruel enchantress who delighted in watching ships shatter against the reefs. Whatever her nature, all agreed that when her voice rose above the storm, doom was close at hand. One moonless night, the ship called the Mary Catherine attempted to cross the coast despite warnings of unsettled seas. The captain, proud and stubborn, dismissed the fears of his crew. As the fog closed around them, a cry pierced the air, high and keening, as though the sky itself had broken into grief. The men froze, for the voice called their names, one by one, in tones that carried both sorrow and certainty. Hours later, the ship was torn apart on hidden rocks, leaving only 2 survivors. They returned with eyes haunted by what they swore they had seen: a woman upon the cliffs, her hair wild, her tears bright as lightning, her face turned toward them with pity too deep to be human. From that night onward, no storm struck Kilkee without someone claiming to hear her voice. Some villagers avoided the cliffs entirely when fog rolled in, while others brought offerings of bread and milk, hoping to appease her. In 1869, a folklorist recorded accounts of the banshee in his journals, preserving the tale as more than superstition. His words describe a presence so consistent, so feared, that even skeptics walked faster past the cliffs at dusk. The Banshee of Kilkee became not merely a legend, but an unspoken truth, a voice that turned the sea from passage into grave. But the banshee was not the only phantom that rose where sea met stone. Off the coast of Fastnet Rock, sailors told of something darker, a haunting tied not to a single cry, but to the very walls of a lighthouse. The keepers of that tower were chosen for their strength, yet even they could not escape what the mist carried. In 1873, 3 men were trapped in the lighthouse during a storm so violent it erased the horizon for 6 days. Their signals for rescue were seen, but no boat could reach them. When the storm cleared, the rescuers found the door hanging open, the room silent, and no trace of the men who had lit the beacon. The official record spoke of an accident, but whispers in nearby villages told another story. The men had been lured by voices calling their names, voices promising safety if they stepped outside. Some claimed the sea demanded a toll for every light that shone against its fury, and the keepers had been claimed as payment. After that, strange events plagued the tower. Doors opened with no hand upon them, Footsteps rang on empty stairs, and the foghorn's moan sometimes carried a second sound, like chanting from the deep. One keeper, years later, reported waking in the night to see 3 figures at the foot of his bed, their clothes soaked, their faces blurred by mist. When he struck his lamp, they vanished, but the sheets remained drenched with seawater. Even after the lighthouse became automated, fishermen swore they saw shadows pacing the lantern gallery, as though the keepers had never left. In 2003, a maintenance worker fled the tower after hearing voices rising and falling in the stairwell, though no other soul was near. The phantom keepers of Fastnet Rock became a tale of men imprisoned by their own duty, unable to leave even in death, forced to guard waters that had betrayed them. The sea's legends are not always mournful. Sometimes they are cruel, dressing terror in beauty. Along the cliffs of Moher, there are tales of the Marrow, creatures half woman and half ocean, whose radiance hid their hunger. With flowing green hair and a red cap that gave them power over land and sea, they appeared to lonely fishermen as visions of comfort. Yet those who followed them never returned. One fisherman named Kian was said to have heard their song on a calm night, a melody sweeter than any harp. Through the mist he saw a figure standing on the rocks, her voice shaping his name as if they had always known one another. Drawn by desire he could not resist, he rowed toward her, leaving behind his nets and boat. The next day, his vessel was found drifting empty, the wood unbroken, the oars untouched. His village whispered that he had been taken to the Marrow's halls beneath the waves, where men were kept alive but never whole, their laughter stolen, their eyes dimmed by salt and sorrow. Others told of groups of Marrows rising together during storms, their laughter ringing above the thunder as ships shattered against stone. In 1913, a survivor of a wreck near the Aran Islands swore he saw pale women pulling drowning men beneath the water, their hair twisting like ropes around the sailors' throats. The official record listed only high seas and navigational error, but the survivor repeated his story until his death, insisting the sea had a face, and it was beautiful and merciless. The Marrow became a reminder that longing could be as deadly as fear. They embodied temptation, the yearning of the human heart for what it should not touch. To meet them was to learn that beauty can conceal cruelty, and that the sea's greatest danger is not always its storms, but its ability to seduce. The whispers of the Marrow taught that weakness of desire could drown a man as swiftly as any wave. As if omens, ghosts, and predators were not enough, sailors feared something even greater, the cursed ship that wandered forever in the mist. Off Cape Clear, they told of a phantom vessel, sails in tatters yet glowing faintly, crewed by silent figures whose eyes burned with pale fire. To see this ship was to carry a mark, for death followed soon after. Reports continued across centuries. A British officer in 1905 described a ship glowing faintly through the mist, though the sea was calm and no breeze stirred its sails. As he ordered his men to pursue, the vessel dissolved into fog, and moments later a storm erupted so suddenly it nearly capsized his patrol boat. He confessed later that he had seen faces on its deck calling his name, though none were men he had ever known. The ghost ship became more than a tale of one doomed vessel. It embodied the idea that the sea could return what it had taken, but only as shadow, as warning, as curse. It was not a single spirit grieving, nor a predator hunting. It was an entire crew bound to eternity, condemned to wander without shore. Its presence was the embodiment of the sea's cruelty. Once taken, never released, except to remind the living that death waits in mist. Taken together, these legends paint the sea as a mirror of the human condition. The banshee's cry reveals the inevitability of fate, the certainty of loss that no strength can resist. The phantom keepers embody the weight of duty, the way devotion can bind even beyond death. The marrow reflects the weakness of desire, the danger of longing for beauty that conceals destruction. The ghost ship represents eternity itself, the endless cycle of death that no prayer can escape. Each tale is different, yet each is bound by mist, by the veil between worlds that the ocean lifts and drops at will. What these stories reveal is not simply superstition, but a truth that haunted the people who told them. They lived beside the sea, depended on it, feared it, and loved it. They knew it as giver and taker, as passage and grave. In their legends, they gave voice to that power, shaping their fears into banshee, keeper, marrow, and ghost. The ocean became not just water, but memory, a living archive of every soul it had claimed. Even today, in quiet villages and lonely harbors, people speak of strange cries, of shapes in the fog, of lights that flicker where no ship sails. The modern world may call them illusions, tricks of wind and tide, yet the stories continue, refusing to fade. Perhaps this is because they hold more than myth. They hold the weight of grief and the hope of meaning, the need to believe that those lost are not gone, but still with us, whispering through the mist. And so the question remains, as the tide rises and the fog drifts inland. Are these legends mere fables, shadows born of fear? Or are they fragments of truth, reminders that the sea remembers every name it has ever spoken? The answer may lie beyond the horizon, where the mist hides what the eye cannot see. But the whispers are still there, calling, warning, and waiting. What do you believe?